Today we talk about the complex and difficult business of emergency care. How's it going, everybody? Jason Croft here, the Credibility Craftsman, and we are talking to Dr. John Turner from Uptown ER. And this is an amazing interview because what I really wanted to dig into was the business behind these emergency room clinics and urgent care places that I certainly have seen all over the place recently, and find out what's that business model? Why is this so lucrative? Why does this make so much business sense to have these all over the place? And Dr. Turner's got such great insight because he is a emergency room doctor and business owner, and is doing both really, really well. It's quite amazing. And this episode is sponsored by Bubbl. You see the Uptown ER mobile right there, and Bubbl's fantastic. You may have seen Paul Adams on this show, the CEO of Bubbl, or seen one of the other sponsored episodes. And Bubbl is a ride-sharing platform. All of their drivers are either retired or off-duty police officers, and they specialize in giving rides to special needs folks, to kids 8 and over, and senior citizens as well. There's that extra level of safety and care that goes into their rides that they provide for everybody. It's fantastic. So make sure you hit them up at bubbldallas.com, Bubbl Dallas.com, and just search that up. You'll find them. They're doing an amazing job here in the Metroplex. Let's get into it with Dr. John Turner. Dr. John Turner.
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for coming out and having me.
Real life doc. If anything goes wrong, we're covered.
Unless I die in the accident too.
Oh, man.
And then we're not.
Then we got to come all the way back here, find somebody else.
Call another doctor in.
That's right. So, Uptown ER is your emergency clinic, standalone clinic.
Yep.
I'm really anxious to dig into the business side of this, because I know I've seen these pop up all over the place. Like I'm sure a lot of us have out there, and it's been in the back of my mind. Like, well, why? There's got to be good business to this. So I'd love for you to get into a little bit your history with these, particularly your background, and then what led you to opening Uptown ER here.
Well, so we ER docs, I mean, we work 24 hours a day, whether you're a night shift or a day shifter or a mid shift or whatever. I mean, it's
always
ER
on and always.
It's always on.
Yep.
And, you as opposed to, let's say, a surgeon or a specialist or a family doc who has their clinic, it's kind of their show. They run it. You walk into the hospital, we have zero control. It's all managed by, administrators and just other folks that have the influence on how the ER runs. Not to say that we don't have a voice, we do, but you still never feel like you have the kind of control you want to deliver the kind of care that you want.
Yeah.
And so when the idea of these freestanding ERs came out, guys jumped at it. They were like, you mean I can go out and have my own ER? I can still practice medicine the way I want. We're not leaving the ER format for an urgent care where you really are limited. You just don't have the kind of facilities to use. You don't have a CAT scan anymore. You don't have life-saving equipment.
Dig into that a little bit, because I know for me they all blend together because I'm outside looking in. I don't know what the difference is there.
So urgent cares classically are going to be open daylight hours, right? Banker's hours, maybe a little extended that, but 8 to 8 or 7 to 8 or something like that. They may or may not have weekend hours. And I mean, they're going to take care of just kind of your average run-of-the-mill urgent type healthcare needs. Maybe you're out of your blood pressure meds. Maybe you feel like you have a little urinary tract infection, a cough, a cold, a small lump, bump, scrape, nothing that is too significant. You're not going to walk into an urgent care with abdominal pain and get worked up. It's just very difficult for them to do that. They don't have the kind of facilities, the labs, like I said, the CAT scan, the ultrasound machine to do those kinds of diagnostic workups. Chest pain, you're never going to get a chest pain workup at an urgent care. They're not equipped for it.
Gotcha.
You're not going to go there with a broken bone that needs to be set and have it set at an urgent care. They just don't have the ability to do it. They serve, a part of the healthcare needs that need to be met, but they're good for what they're good for. But the ER is there when it goes to the next level.
Yeah.
And so when you're too sick for an urgent care, that's where the ER kicks in. The problem, though, is that healthcare in general has become something that people want convenience. And so when primary care doctors were overrun, you'd call your primary care doctor up and say, hey, doc, I'm sick. I need to be seen. Like, we could see you in 2 weeks. Well, where do you think these people are going to go? They're going to go find an urgent care, or they're going to find an ER.
Yeah.
And now the urgent cares are sitting on long waits as well. And so folks were going to the ERs. And so the ER docs, someone 10 years ago or so, figured out that they could open up their own freestanding ERs. It's actually been around since the 70s. The inception of these was meant to service kind of rural settings where maybe a hospital wouldn't go, and you could put in essentially an ER that would service that community.
Gotcha. Okay.
And when you figure 90 to 95% of what walks through an ER, we're going to treat and treat anyway. We're going to take care of you on site, and then you're going to go home and follow up. It's between 10%, anywhere from 5 to 10 to 10 to 15, depending on whether you're more of a tertiary care center or a community hospital. Gotcha. But somewhere in that range is what's going to get admitted. So that means 85 to 95% of what walks in any ER is going to be taken care of on site and then sent home. So a freestanding ER made sense for these small rural communities. They didn't really need a full hospital.
Yeah.
But someone figured out that they could take that model and apply it to the urban settings where hospitals were sitting on 5, 6, 7 hour waits, and put in their own freestanding ER, run it the way they want, deliver care the way they want, and get paid for it.
Yeah.
That was the thing. They had to find a way to get paid for it. And so the early days they weren't. So they lobbied the state legislators, and they got legislation that
because insurance didn't recognize it.
They didn't have to.
Oh, wow.
They just considered you an urgent care.
Okay, because insurance doesn't recognize the urgent care the same way they do. Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Essentially, an urgent care for insurance companies is really nothing more than a primary care clinic. They do carve out some slightly different contracts for urgent cares, but it's still it's in the same realm as a primary care.
Gotcha.
So you're looking at reimbursements that are going to be between $50 and $150. Whereas in the ER, you figure the kind of equipment that we have to have. You have to be staffed 24 hours a day. You have to be staffed with board-certified physicians, ER-trained nurses, CAT scans that cost $250,000 to put in, ultrasound machines that are $50,000 to put in, X-ray systems that are $100,000 to put in, pharmaceuticals that, in order for you to staff or stock your inventory, are going to run you $50,000 to $100,000 every month to put in, laboratory equipment that'll run you $100,000 to put in, and then the the ongoing maintenance of all this. It's a very expensive venture to open up an ER, whereas an urgent care is just an office that has extended hours, and they do a good job for what they do, but they're not an ER. Yeah. I mean, you walk into an ER and we're there to save your life. And everything in between, fairly basic stuff to the stuff that you walk in trying to die. We can handle all of it. And that's some of the misconception out in the community is that, like you just alluded to, you're not quite sure where does the urgent care start and stop, and then the ER, go from there. Yeah. There's really nothing that we can't take care of. Even the guys that are out here like we are at Uptown ER that aren't attached to a hospital, the only difference is that at the hospital, depending on how big the hospital is actually, they may or may not have specialists or surgeons down the hallway that they can call and consult to come to the ER. Other than that, I mean, the ER doc sitting in Baylor Hospital versus the ER doc sitting at Uptown ER is doing the same job, doing the same thing.
That makes sense, yeah. So you're going down the insurance road. So essentially some of these folks who had the ERs got together, lobbied,
got the state to license these things, which means now the law states that anyone with insurance that has emergency coverage, and you may or may not, I've actually learned some insurance policies, you don't have emergency care coverage. I can't imagine signing up for that policy, but some people
just
have.
Don't know. Yeah.
But as long as your insurance states that you have emergency coverage, then doesn't matter what ER you go to, they can't dictate where you're going to have your emergency. So when you show up to an ER, that ER deserves to get paid.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, all of a sudden these things became cash cows. But they just did. I mean, to be honest with the public and anyone that's paying attention or listening, I mean, they did. They became cash cows. Doctors got rich overnight with these.
And what was that? What made it so lucrative for these doctors?
So part of the problem with our system is that it stays fragmented. So when they licensed these, it meant that private insurances, Blue Cross, Aetna, United, all those had to pay. But the federal folks, the Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARES, didn't, because that's dictated out of the feds, and so we couldn't really see those patients. I mean, we could, but we had no way to really send them a bill.
Right.
And so for the most part, we kind of had to keep those people out. Now, if a 75-year-old Medicare patient walks onto our doorstep with chest pain, he is going to get taken care of, regardless of whether he pays or not. But as we know, a lot of the stuff that folks walk into an ER for, and it needs to be taken care of, and it needs to be taken care of fairly promptly, but it may not be life-threatening at the moment, which means those people can be given the choice, stay and pay, or go down the street to the hospital where your insurance will be used and you won't have to worry about all that out-of-pocket cost.
Right.
And so these people very quickly learned, if they had Medicare, Medicaid, or TRICARE, that they really couldn't come to the freestanding centers. They had to go to the hospitals. The other population that we're not talking about yet are the indigent. So we really have a hard time taking care of the indigent as well. And what the public doesn't understand is that these hospitals, the altruistic hospitals that take everyone, no one gets turned away, well, there is federal and state grant money that they go after to help cover their costs for indigent care.
Yeah.
I have no way to go after that. None of us in the freestanding world can go after that.
Because you can't do Medicaid, Medicare. You can't go after those grants. You can't. Wow, that's quite a
that was
run the red light there.
Good job.
Glad
He was
we
going
weren't
to hit your
right
side.
there. Goodness. No more joking about accidents. Goodness.
Motor vehicle crash during the interview.
Yes. Bad news, we got in a wreck. Good news, I was with the doctor. I'm all good. I'm good. So yeah, you talked about that, when we were chatting briefly too, that's a little bit of another misconception out there just from the general public is, all these things are just popping up in the nicer areas, or they're just in that. But there's no way for you to actually help these other folks who have the Medicaid, the Medicare. Yeah,
it's very hard for us. It's not to say that we don't. I mean, and actually in the industry, we're now trying to keep those numbers so that we can combat some of that misconception and prove that we do see a fair number of people and we eat the costs. We just pay for it out of our own pocket.
Yeah.
And so I hope those numbers are fairly forthcoming soon so we can prove that aspect of our care. But right now, the hospitals have access to funds that we don't.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so we're not cherry picking the privately insured. It's unfortunately at the moment, it's all that we can go after. So it actually hurts us. The misconception is that we're cherry picking the folks. The reality is that we actually want to see the Medicares, the Medicaids, and the TRICAREs because, it still pays reasonably well. Medicaid, not so much, but, Medicare pays reasonably well. And, we want to take care of those people. My own parents are Medicare age. I technically, have to take care of them for free in my center. Right. Because I can't bill for it.
And so, and go back to, so this became, and dig into all the advantage. So this became like, oh, wow. I mean, ER doctors saw this opportunity, made a lot of sense. Yep. Dig into those numbers, if you will, too, like how it just made financial sense to jump in and start building these.
So you figure that you don't have the drain or costs that come with taking care of some of the indigent or the Medicaid. You don't have the hospital attached to you, and now that goes down a whole nother aspect of taking care of people where now the insurance companies are trying to hit you with essentially, you can call them fines. But if you have readmission rates of these patients, and as we know, chronically ill people wind up being readmitted over and over again, that hurts your bottom line. So, so those are some aspects that we don't have to deal with. So if you do have a fairly robust patient population that you're seeing, or volume, let's say, you're seeing 30 patients a day in a freestanding ER, the reality is you're making a lot of money. You are, and you don't have a drain in your system. Really, for the most part, all those patients coming through are paying you fairly well through their insurance. Mm-hmm. And so all of a sudden, docs that realize that were like, I can get out of the hospital. I can run my own business. I can make a lot more money. I don't have to work all the slave type shifts that we were doing before, where you're up all hours of the night. You can get to where you start hiring other doctors to do some of those shifts. So now you're generating income even when you're at home or you're away on vacation. Whereas the typical ER doctor, the only money you make is if you show up and do a shift. That's it. Now you have something that was generating some wealth even when you weren't there. It was generating profits, and then you also had the potential to even sell your center at some point and make some money there. Whereas if you go to work at one of the big hospitals, the last day you work a shift there is the last day you make money.
Right. Yeah, just time for money.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of pluses in the early days, but as with any good thing, everybody decides to get in on it.
Oversaturation.
Yep. Everyone and their dog got in.
And I imagine plenty of folks who just had no business running a business, right?
Yeah, what do they say about docs? We make great business people, is that right?
Yeah, that's what everyone says. Yeah.
Doctors are great at business. And so, yeah, we were real smart about it in our industry.
Yeah. And this is why, I think it's so interesting too. Again, getting back to your background, because your ownership in these is well beyond Uptown ER, and you're really proving that experience and know-how to run these, as well as being a good place to come get taken care of.
Well, I tell you what, we've done well in locations, and we're taking some lumps in some locations. We opened up one in San Antonio, and we were the first to come to this area, in the Rim area. If you know San Antonio, the Rim area is really a nice area. And the closest access you had to really any significant hospital healthcare was way down into the hospital district. So you're going to drive at least 15, if not more like 30 or 40 minutes, depending on traffic, to get to a hospital.
Oh, wow.
And so we thought we were being smart. We're opening up the first freestanding center up in that little region. And the month after we opened, another center opened up. And then a month after that, another center opened up. And I mean within like a mile of us, a mile in all directions, we had 3 new centers open up. So we went from being fairly smart and opening up in a place that we thought, could really use the care, to now we were one of 4, all within striking distance of each other, and everyone is suffering down there for it. Everyone is suffering.
Yeah, and you can't do anything about it.
I can't do anything about it other than do the best we can. Our reviews are stellar. We get a lot of return ER visits from either word of mouth, family, friends, but that only goes so far when there's just so many access points for care that you're spreading it out amongst 4 centers in such a dense location that it just doesn't work. 1 center would have been perfect. 4 doesn't make sense. Another perfect example is New Braunfels. We were going to open up, our first location was San Marcos. Okay. So just south of there was New Braunfels. Another thriving community, both San Marcos and New Braunfels, blowing up, tons of folks moving in. So we thought the west side would have been great because, again, those people had to kind of drive into town to get to some care, and all of that was building up. And so we thought, well, we'll provide them some care out there. So we started negotiating land price, and the next thing we know, there was 3 more ERs that were going to open up around us. We pulled out. We didn't want to be any part of that. New Braunfels is a town of about 70,000 people. They have 2 hospitals, mind you. There are now 5 freestanding ERs in the city of New Braunfels.
What?
Yes. Somebody's not going to make it. Several people are going to close.
Yeah.
But that's the problem with the industry.
Yeah. Because you've got Lubbock, right?
So we had 2 centers in Lubbock.
Okay.
Local hospital there liked our access points. We were out there in the emerging part of town, and so we just got acquired there. So we've now folded ourselves in with a hospital there. And then here in the My ER company, we've got the ER here at Uptown. We've got San Marcos, which is our first one, and we just added a primary care to San Marcos. So now we can kind of do a full spectrum of care, whether primary care, urgent care, the ER itself, or the telehealth. We have all that to provide in San Marcos. San Antonio is still a freestanding ER. We're looking at trying to add maybe an urgent care component to that. Abilene just opened about 4 months ago. It's a hybrid to tremendous success in Abilene. I mean, just overwhelming success there. And then Bernie is our last 2 at the moment that we have on the radar. That's urgent care opens there this week or next week, and then the ER will open this summer.
Very nice. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so what do you think it is that you're getting right in all of this that a lot of people haven't, and even currently aren't right now? Because you mentioned, several places shutting down and blowing, this correction, if you will.
Well, like with anything in business, I mean, there's some smarts that go along with it, but there's also some luck. I'm not going to doubt that there's some luck that's been on our side. I mean, we picked San Marcos for our first one on purpose. There was really no one else around, so we weren't trying to be competitive with another company that was already open in an area. We were trying to go somewhere where we felt like they, needed us. We did the same thing in Lubbock. We did the same thing in Abilene. Uptown as well. If you look around where we are here at Uptown, unless you go to Big Baylor, or you go all the way down to Big Methodist, or you go sit in the line that's waiting for you at Parkland, and we all know what's waiting for you there. Yeah. We are the closest ER for anyone that's in downtown Bishop Arts, Design District, Uptown, Highland Park. We are the closest and most accessible ER for any of those people.
Yeah, that's right.
Otherwise, you're going to go to a hospital and wait.
Yeah.
And in fact, the other freestanding ERs that were around this area have all closed. There's one more that's left open that I will allow to remain nameless, but there's one more. And other than that, we are it. And so I think as more and more of Dallas discovers where we're located and the fact that you can get in so much faster, and a super friendly staff, our reviews are stellar. I mean, everyone is rating us high.
Well, that's a huge part. I mean, you've certainly got, I mean, you touch on luck and you touch on, location and stuff, but some folks in the same location are shutting down. So this definitely has to do with the service you're giving, with the facilities themselves.
I think some of it's our tenacity to just stay engaged. Some of it you kind of just have to, you got to just grind through it. In the early days of taking this center over, when it did have kind of a bad reputation from the previous owners, I mean, we've had to overcome that. We had to overcome, some competition around the corner, sending out some, unflattering flyers to the neighborhood to try and convince people not to use us.
And how do you combat that? How do you combat that like when you took this over, because that's a lot of people do that, whether it's maybe it's not even taking over a company, but it's taking over, they're just selling a service that somebody else got burned on. Right? How do you go about that? How do you dig in? And
for the most part, we changed over some of the staff, some of the old guard that just didn't need to be there, that weren't going to treat the patients the way we wanted. So we removed some of them and replaced them with some better recruits. And then I don't think some of the docs that were working there were also maybe servicing this patient population the way that I want it taken care of. And so we've really applied the core owners are really the ones handling the shifts here.
Okay.
And so, we're very much hands-on. We bend over backwards for the patients. I mean, the kind of discharge instructions you get here are, look, if you go home and this isn't going right, either call us or just sneak back over here. We'll see you. You're not going to be sitting in the long line like you would be if you tried to do that at one of the big hospitals.
Yeah.
And if you show back up at a big hospital ER, I mean, it's re-registered. It's another ER bill going out. We don't always send a new bill out. We may just see you just because we need to make sure things are going right. We want to make sure we didn't miss something. We want to make sure you feel comfortable with the care that you received. And, a few minutes out of our day, we want to do that for our patients.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that kind of service at the hospital. And every patient gets my card with my cell phone.
And all of that, that's a business mindset.
Yeah.
That's rather than I'm here to work a shift, I'm going home mindset. That's what it comes down to. And I think that's maybe isn't always translated into these other ones and stuff like that, is because great customer service is good business, right? So I think that's genius.
Like I sent a lady over, she needed some stuff done that we just didn't have. I mean, there are some functions that the hospitals are always going to have. Like, we can't do blood transfusions, things like that.
Okay.
One of the things that we just can't do. So I sent this lady over to the hospital last night. I gave her my phone number, my card, and just said, hey, when you get done with your care, I'd love to hear how it went, what they find. And if you don't get the kind of discharge instructions or the kind of medicines you feel like you need, just call me. I'll call it in for you. Oh. And she did. She hit me up about 6 this morning. I love to hear that the actual workup that needed to be completed did turn out to be negative, so she didn't have what it was I was worried about.
Yeah.
And then she said, hey, they really didn't give me anything, and I'm still hurting pretty good. I called her in a little bit stronger medicine than what she could have gotten over the counter, and she loves us for it.
Oh, I bet.
And you couldn't get that at another center.
Oh, yeah. And you don't think, like, it's not like you want repeat customer. You don't want them to be hurting, but that word of mouth that comes from that, that's incredible.
I think it's carrying well. I mean, we are getting a lot of word of mouth activity and folks that are friends or family members of someone that we've taken care of, or they got a chronic condition and they're the kind of patient that they're going to wind up in the ER several times a year. Gotcha, and they're choosing us, over the other guys.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so even here in Uptown, you've got obviously the ER, you've got the telemedicine aspect. If somebody hasn't experienced that, give me a little synopsis there.
We knew we wanted to offer telehealth, but I obviously don't want to get into IT development and all that cost. And so there were some guys out there that are offering the platform, and we found our ways to some guys out of Michigan that I think are doing a good job with Care Convene. And so what we've done is we've added a tab on our websites that you can go to. This is Virtual Clinic, and it'll take you over to the platform, to the new website. It'll say Care Convene on it. And you put in our provider code, which is MER247. A little play on our name, My Emergency Room 24/7. And so that gets you to me or one of my docs. And that's 24 hours a day. At the moment, we have a price set at like $50. We're not trying to deal with the insurances because at the moment, it's kind of a mix and match. Some insurances are paying for telehealth, some of them aren't.
Oh,
it's just still kind of the wild, wild west there. And so we just figured we would pick a price point that was at roughly what your urgent care copay would be anyway. And now you don't have to get off your couch. You can just hit your computer tab, pulls up the link, and then you're either chatting with me or you're on the web, video link, and we're talking about your problem. And then when it takes a couple of minutes, figure out what you got, and then you give me the pharmacy you want medicines called into, we call them in, and then we're off to the races. You know, hopefully you're better in a couple of days, and if you need follow-up, you just dial back in and follow up. If it gets so severe that doesn't work for you, well, then we've got the ERs that you can walk into, and we would accommodate you there.
That's great. What's next? What's the next step here?
Next step is we want to expand our services. So, we've realized that just the ER by itself isn't the way to go. We want to be able to be, as much as possible, everything that a patient needs short of surgical stuff, which, we're forming those relationships with, I feel like, good surgeons, so that when I refer you over to the specialist, I know you're going to get good care there. But short of surgery or needing to be admitted, we want to be able to offer essentially primary care, urgent care, telehealth that'll follow you really anywhere in the world. You have a Wi-Fi signal, you can access your doc, us, to take care of you and call meds in for you. And then the ER, when stuff just gets much worse, you have a one-stop shop. And we have multiple locations around the state. So as I've noticed, people travel, and there's times I've taken care of them in one city, and then I followed up with them in the other city because I was going there the next week, and I just told them to come see me at the other center. So there's a nice continuity of care there for these people. It's friendlier. I mean, let's face it, I'm not trying to knock the hospital, but that is a rough environment. And when you're busy and you just got beat down with multiple trauma patients, and now you're walking into some fairly innocuous condition, maybe they've got a little scrape on their arm and they want it looked at, and they're demanding you to get in there right now. Meanwhile, you've just been trying to save people's lives. It wears you down, and unfortunately, folks in the hospital get a little jaded. And so the care that you're going to get there is going to feel, I think, to some degree rushed, even though you're there for hours. It's not that kind of arm around your shoulder feel of your care. We have the time to give that to you. And so it is very much a much more friendlier environment, less scary. And when you figure you're about to walk in the doors of an ER, most folks are a little bit scared.
Oh, yeah.
It could be the worst day of your life that you're experiencing, and you're coming somewhere to get care, and you don't know if you're going to walk into the ER and get judged. You figure if you're a drug addict, I mean, those folks always feel like they're walking in and being judged, or a psychiatric patient. A lot of the hospital staff they're just worn down by it. They don't want to deal with your psych problems. It's hard. It's frustrating. At our place, we don't do that, and we've had some success stories. I've had patients come back and say, I walked in your place 6 times over the last 2 years, and every time somebody took the time to pull me aside and just talk to me about my drug addiction. And it didn't happen the first time. It didn't happen the second time, nor the third, fourth, or fifth. But finally, when I came in that 6th time, the light went off, and I finally decided to seek help. Went to an inpatient treatment facility, got clean. At this point, they were telling me they'd been clean for over a year. And, they said that we had a lot to do with it because we were such a non-judgmental format. When they came in, we weren't here to try and make them feel bad about their life choices.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
So they knew they had a friend. They knew they had somewhere they could go and get care and not feel like they had that judgmental eye on them.
Right.
And so that's the kind of environment that we present to the public.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to see the next level for this. I think it's amazing when you can get these two components right. When you can get doctors, amazing care, and business all together, that's incredible. I think that's an amazing combination there.
We do have hope we're for our first hospital. We are talking with some developers right now about the potential to put in what's called a micro hospital. If you went to go look up the definition of it, I think you'll find that a lot of different people have their own definition of what it would be. For us, it would be some inpatient beds, somewhere around 10, and then probably 6 or 7 ER beds. But with that, we can do kind of a hub and spoke model, where if we put a micro hospital in somewhere where they need it, there's been a couple hospitals that have shut down in the DFW area. We're looking to replace them. But instead of the classic, 40,000 square foot behemoth hospital with all the services that are expensive, all the recruiting you got to do to try and keep and retain surgeons and specialists, we don't want to do that. We want that to stay at the tertiary care centers, the larger hospitals. We want to provide an environment with a micro hospital component that allows you to admit some patients that need to be admitted for basic medical care. It's more than you can do in just an ER setting. They need a few days in the hospital. But it also allows us to take our current centers and make them satellite ERs, which then would get us around that problem that we have at the moment where we can't see Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE really.
Right.
Now we can, because we have a hospital license. Once we have that hospital license, we can see Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE, and we want to. And that's our plan for the future.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. How do people find you and find out more about Uptown and everything?
So we have a website that's uptownerdallas.com, and then the rest of our company is under the myemergencyroom.com. But either way, we have those websites.
We'll find them.
Yeah. And then from there, it gives contacts and links to everyone that's involved in our system, and me as well.
So you were talking about insurance with all of this and how kind of a mess a lot of it is. Good and bad, right? Just trying to navigate around. What are some of those other misconceptions regarding insurance and cost and all of that for these?
So what I've come to learn, and I don't care, this is out there for anyone to hear and see, is that the insurance companies have all the power. They just do. They have all the power. We don't have any way as small business guys to negotiate decent contracts. We're not big enough like a Baylor to get good contracts. And so they know that. And so the kind of contracts they want to give us are awful. And it makes it very hard to try and do business like that. And so we purposefully stay out of network because there's a state law on our side that forces them to pay us. And they supposedly have to pay us somewhere close to kind of what they're paying the hospitals, although we'll never know that for sure.
Right.
But
because the hospitals keep all that super tight, right?
But they love to try and spread this myth out there that, these places are out of network, and so it's going to cost you more money. And in the early days, that was absolutely not true. But what I've come to learn, is that they actually are now creating a special inside of your policy will be a policy for primary care. Maybe you'll have dental, urgent care, ER. But now instead of you just simply having a classic copay for your urgent or your ER pay, they are making freestanding ERs their own special carve out, and they are making us more expensive. So now that they're telling the public we're more expensive, and I think historically that's been a lie, now they actually are trying to make us more expensive by making your copay higher for us over the hospital. And that's unfair, and I have no way to combat that unless you want to go out and spend, I don't know how much money with a lawyer to fight them. Right. There actually is a class action lawsuit that's being brought against the insurance companies. We're a part of it, and we'll see where it goes to try and force them to treat us fairly. Yeah, and that's got to be coming from the hospitals themselves, right? It's got to be pressure on the insurance. It's a mix. I think, you'll notice that some of these hospital systems are now putting in their own insurance. You'll have Baylor insurance, and it's just Baylor. Or if you're over in Fort Worth, you could have just THR insurance. These companies are growing so large that they can create their own system. And they try to keep you retained in that system. They don't want you going outside their system. And so you're right. There's a blurring of the lines between a hospital and an insurance company. They're almost becoming one. And so for the little guys like us, it's very hard for us to fight that. We're doing the best we can, but the pressure is definitely coming down on us and making it harder and harder for us to deliver care, get paid kind of the same level that the hospitals were. We're eating a lot of the costs now. Yeah. So instead of, I don't want you to come in here and worry about your ER bill. The last thing I think you should be worried about when you have the worst day of your life and now you're coming in with, a kidney stone, or you think you're having a heart attack, is worrying about the bill. And so we still try to just write off a fair amount of your out-of-pocket costs when we can.
That's amazing. That's huge. And again, I appreciate you sharing that insight, because no idea. Like, you know us from the outside, and you get a headline here and this and that, which, of course, coming from the biggest players, and they're putting that stuff out.
Well, like the lady at Dallas Morning News, I won't name her here, but I had a conversation with her and said, hey, how about you write a nice piece instead of a hit piece? Why don't you write a piece about what we're doing different, so that we're not balance billing patients? We're not that place where you hear your neighbor went into some corner ER and they had 2 stitches and they got a $5,000 bill. That's not us. It'll never be us. Why don't you write a feel-good story about what we're doing to try and change the industry? She wouldn't do it. She had no desire to do it. She prefers the hit pieces and the stuff that generates the kind of misconceptions,
polarizing and everything. Yeah,
and the misconceptions and mistruths. She prefers to spread those than the truth of how, at least for us, how we run our system.
Right. Man, that's a shame. Well, I appreciate you being on and sharing that a lot. And it's been fun driving around in the Bubbl car.
I love the Bubbl car.
The Uptown ER Bubbl car. This is great. I love that you guys are sponsoring on here, and it's such a blast. So I appreciate you sharing. And
we'll stay partners with you guys as long as you let us.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Thank you.
See ya. I hope that was insightful and just eye-opening to you as it was from me. It was amazing to learn about just the complexities between the insurance companies and the big hospitals down to these smaller brands, what the difference is in all of these places popping up, and how hard it really is to run all of this and sort of fight the good fight a little bit when it comes to making sure people are taken care of. So make sure you check out Uptown ER and see what they're doing, kind of follow along with that business model. And of course, special thanks to Bubbl for making this whole episode possible. Again, an amazing company in their own right, giving rides to special needs folks, to kids 8 and over, and to senior citizens. All their drivers are either retired or off-duty police officers, and I'm excited to just see them expand more and more these days. So if you like interviews like this, make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. And if you're listening on iTunes, subscribe there or your favorite podcasting platform. And we'll see you on the next one.
It's Saturday night. It was Saturday night and I'm feeling kinda silly. Winter coat on cause the air was chilly, but I'ma make my way out to the record spot. Gotta find some new breaks for the beats to rock. I gotta come with the flavor like some lifesavers. On now and later, Dr. Beatmaker. If I'm a player, it's like your tape deck. And if you miss the gig, then take a rain check. Stacks of wax piled high to the ceiling, need a U-Haul truck if I would think about stealing. But it's not my steed, so I commence with the digging, no kidding. Something that'll keep the beats hitting what I'm getting. So much to choose from, bro.